Coming from a married couple who investigates all things supernatural, most people forget one side of investigating, the everyday human side. Before investigating, they had to learn everything that's involved with cases, all the while balancing their marriage, family life, friendships, and work life. Twisted Ascensions brings an inside look at how their marriage works on and off cases, spreading the knowledge they've learned over the years about trauma, drug abuse, dealing with spiritual gifts, protection work, and so much more. Dive into the world of a paranormal couple that doesn't shy away from hard questions, but rather offers raw and unfiltered answers. Listen to the good, bad, and ugly stories of various topics and hear from other investigators, past clients, and colleagues within the field. Now, your host of Twisted Ascensions, Caden and Alyssa Mask.
Welcome to the murder, folks. It is Friday night. I am your host, Caden.
I'm Alyssa.
And this is Twisted Ascensions. And boy, do we have a treat for you tonight. It has been a hot one all week. I know most of us that either work outside or you have to even just walk outside to go to the grocery store in this heat. It has been brutal. It has been hot. And you know what? We're going to keep tonight even hotter because we have with us tonight the owner of Old South Pittsburg Hospital and the haunted Harriman Hospital out of Tennessee, Mr. Ronnie Dee himself. And we're completely thrilled to have him. I think that, with our last show, we had talked about, we really wanted to get a haunted location owner on the podcast to ask the questions that investigators or enthusiasts really want to ask. And Mr. Ronnie could be more perfect for this.
Because there were a couple of teams from a couple of different states on one of our shows that were asking a lot of questions about locations further south of them and stuff. And it was something we told them then that we would try to get somebody on here, and we got one of the greatest ones to get on here.
Absolutely. Hello, Facebook user. Hello, Robert. Hello, everybody. Come on in. So yes, like I said, we have Ronnie Dee tonight. He bought Old South Pittsburg. Well, first, Old South Pittsburg was voted as Tennessee most haunted location, with Harriman Hospital coming third. He's going to give us the backstage access to ask him questions. You watching, you're going to be able to ask your questions. Just put them in there. We're reading them. I'm writing them down. We're going to ask him. But without further ado, let's bring up Mr. Ronnie himself, and let's get this show started.
Hey guys, how are you this evening?
Hey,
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to live up to that beginning of this podcast. I mean, that was a pretty impressive beginning. I don't think I'm that that impressive of a person, but thank you guys.
But you are, like I was telling you in backstage. A lot of people don't understand, and even investigators or enthusiasts really don't understand what all goes into owning a haunted location and running a haunted location professionally and properly. And you, sir, have done it not once, but twice that I know of, and you may have more out there.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness.
I mean, the numbers, they say that. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. And it's hard enough for a lot of people to do one, and you did that one time over. So, that speaks to itself.
Well, and really a lot of it just starts with having a really good team to back you up. And, because that's really, really, it's not a me thing, it's an us thing. And I'm fortunate enough that we assembled two really good, strong teams at both locations who are mostly paranormal, investigators themselves, but they care as much about the building as I do. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's really what makes it what it is. I mean, we just got terrific people who work for us. So, without them, none of this would be possible. But it really is a challenge. I mean, you started off, talking about it, and most people don't realize that Tennessee is the Bible Belt. There's a lot of ingrained religion down there, and once you are looking at a location, it's not just putting money down on a table and opening up a business. Because a lot of these hospitals or locations are in places where we're really frowned upon. they don't understand what we do. They think that we're all kind of sitting around in a circle, conjuring up demons and, doing seances and, chopping chickens up and doing all other stuff. And
yes.
So especially Harriman was a really big challenge because, it's in the town of Harriman, which is the town that Temperance built, which means that it was one of the societies that basically was supposed to be a perfect society with no drugs, no alcohol and all this stuff. So, it took us quite some time to be able to convince the local government and locals themselves that, what we're doing is not what it appears to be. It's not what you see in, some of the TV shows and that kind of stuff. So it is challenging, but at the end of the day, it's very rewarding as well, too, because I get to meet people like yourselves and, we get to hang out with some movie stars and, all sorts of different things because Harriman is actually utilized for a lot more than just paranormal investigating. So it's really kind of a neat location. Yeah,
and we're going to get into some of that because a lot of people don't realize that you do much more than just ghost tours or private investigations. You do a lot of things out of there that you got a little bit of everything for everybody. We're definitely going to get into that, but I kind of want to take it back just a little bit and let's take it to the basics for the people who have never got the pleasure of meeting you in person or on podcast. What got you into the field? Did you come from a team and then decided that you wanted to buy Old South? Like, what started this?
To be really honest with you, I think I pretty much followed the path that most everybody else did. You're kind of inquisitive about it as a kid. I think with me, it wasn't so much seeing spirits, but it was the deja vu thing. When you're driving down the road and you're like, oh, I've been here before. Or something like that. You're kind of like, well, and it's kind of all connected. And then I think the thing that got me really, really most involved was watching it on TV, like most of us do. And I think with my background is I was watching TV and I just kind of liked listening to the EVPs and you're on the other side of the TV listening to these guys going, oh, did you hear that? And you're like, yeah, BS. You're really trying to debunk the guy on TV. So we assembled a group up here in Illinois. A bunch of us got together and started going to locations and just kind of got addicted to it. And I think it's kind of neat because it is, people don't realize how addictive the hobby or industry can be because once you get that first EVP or you see that first experience, it's like more. It's kind of addicting. Yeah. So, so then you kind of get into the history of the locations and that's what's really neat about paranormal investigating is it's deeper than just the spirits. It's the historical value of the locations as well, too. So then it's just one of those things that I think really, really kind of kept me intrigued because the more and more I did it, the more and more there's layers of it. And I liked peeling back all those layers and with the history, with the ghost hunting, with everything that's involved, it's just a really neat industry.
Yeah. I mean, it really is because there's so many ways or so many paths that one can take within this field. You can go strictly, haunted locations where you just travel the world and go to already established locations. You can go private clients. You can go strictly ghost or spirit or go strictly cryptids or ufology. You can go anywhere or all of the above for those people who want to wear a whole lot of hats at once.
Yeah.
But yes, I've been involved. Well, we've been involved collectively for a little over 10 years on I say professional, I don't mean professional, but in the public's eye for 5 years.
We didn't even know it was a thing. We didn't know people did it as groups and teams. We did not know.
And what you said about Tennessee being in the Bible Belt, okay, we're in Mississippi. We know all about that. So, we kind of kept to ourselves and our friends knew, and if somebody was experiencing something, they'd be like, "Yeah, I know them." And
I got the people for you to go talk to. It was that kind of thing because
everybody thinks it's all satanic worship and conjuring demons.
And even on television at that time in our neck of the woods, people were not watching that. They were barely watching Harry Potter.
True.
I mean,
which is kind of unique because and that's the part that always kind of, it's okay. Witchcraft is okay. And that kind of thing is okay. But when you take that little bit step more and you contact or, you're dealing with spirits, the line is like, okay, it's okay to watch Harry Potter, but God forbid you go sit in a vacant building at night and, try and talk to spirits. It's just,
Exactly.
The same, are they not?
Yeah.
That was my theory behind it, and it's still my mindset to this day. There's really no difference.
Look at
and
that.
a lot of different stuff when people are like, "Oh, witchcraft," and I'm like, "Do you do this and do that? Okay, that's a ritual, right? There's no difference,
Right?
There's
and
no
I agree
difference."
with that. Right.
Hogwarts is a haunted castle.
True. So, what made you want to buy Old South Pittsburg? Because you bought it first.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah. So and I do know we investigated 3 times before you bought it.
Okay.
So glad you did. We're gonna leave it at that. So glad that you did, because you've done phenomenal work there. Phenomenal work. But I just remember there was a period of time that something happened. It went up for sale. And then did you kind of keep your eyes on it? Like, one day I'm going to own that, and then it goes up for sale and you're like, oh, I'm getting it? Or is it just like, hey, it's up for sale.
Or was it something you just ran up on?
It was a whole lot. Well, you know, when they say things are kind of meant to happen, I think that's what kind of happened. As I was investigating Old South Pittsburg, like you guys as well, many, many times I've been there. As a matter of fact, my first full body operation I've ever seen in my entire life was in that building. And it was really kind of weird because I've been to, like you guys, I've been to various locations throughout the United States. And, you know, a couple of them, like Hillview Manor out in Pennsylvania, a couple of them grabbed me. And originally I was really in love with Hillview Manor. Made an offer to purchase that building a long time ago, and it fell through. I got my heart broken because I really, really wanted to get involved in the ownership of the buildings, primarily because I saw the condition. You know, it's, and I know there's a lot of really good owners out there, but then there's a lot of not so good owners out there. And you walk into these buildings and I can see the historic value of them, and I could see what they used to look like. And, it was kind of heartbreaking to go into some of the locations and just see them deteriorating, but the owners just pocketing gobs and gobs of money. I mean, and so it got to the point where I was like, I started looking, and I was really, really like, oh, I want to do this. I want to give this a try. And so I was at Old South Pittsburg, and I saw my first full body operation. I actually called the owner of the building the next morning, said, I want to buy the building. They turned me down because they were making a good amount of money on it. And then a couple of weeks later, somebody that I came in contact with sent me just a link to the IRS. And in the IRS, it said, you know, it's the address of Haunted South Pittsburg, Old South Pittsburg Hospital was in there. I'm like, oh, well, I made a bunch of phone calls. I called the state of Tennessee. I found out that the gentleman that actually owned the building was way behind on taxes, and that they were going to actually sell the property for tax purposes. And so I got a hold of the state of Tennessee. I got a hold of, you know, them, and I was like, well, I'm interested. And I'm going to be really honest with you. When I first contacted them, they wanted just gobs and gobs of money. You know, because remember, the IRS is trying to recoup some of that money that they were out on the old owners. So I said, you know what, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I said, I want the building, but it's just not in my budget to spend that much money.
Yeah.
Right.
So it went up for auction, and I think it went up for, my dates are going to be a little off, but I think it went up for auction in March, and nobody showed up to the auction. And I was like, even I didn't show up. It was funny because everybody's like, they're like, oh, you're going to show up. And I was like, you know what? I honestly, I can't afford what they're asking for it. So the IRS agent called me, and we were chatting, and she says, you know what, Ronnie? She says, you might be in luck. She said, nobody showed up. So she said, make me an offer. So I made an offer to the IRS, and as I'm making the offer to the IRS, somebody backdoored me and made an offer to the IRS. And so the IRS contacted me and said, well, since there's 2 offers on the table, we have to put it back up for auction. And I said, okay, you know, whatever is fair, you know, you got to do legally.
Right.
So went up back in auction in October. I think it was October 12th or something like that. I flew down there and met with the IRS agent. I knew what my maximum was. And it was really kind of nice because she looked at me and she says, it's closed bidding. So I can't really tell you what the bid is, but I will tell you that you're going to win this. So I was like, okay.
Okay.
So I put my offer in, and she says, you know what? She says, you're just a little short. Can you give me another couple $1,000s? So I said, okay. So I bid that up a couple $1,000s, and she said, done. You know, we walked away, signed on the dotted line, and right down there. What was really, really funny, guys, and this is the highlight of the event. So the IRS agent through March through October, and I have been on the phone, maybe once or twice a week, because I was really, like I said, I really wanted this building.
Mhm.
And so she says, well, we got to go through the red tape. It's got to be posted on news. I mean, there's a legality behind everything that they do. So we were down there, and I said, and we started working on the building prior to ownership because we knew the condition of the building. And she says, you know what, even if you start cleaning it up, it's just beneficial for the IRS, even if you don't end up, whatever. So she had come down one day prior to the auction just to meet me, to walk through the building. And we walk through the building and the door shuts, and we all hear this woman just scream, like this blood curdling scream. It was just myself and the IRS agent in the building. And she looked at me and she goes, we're going to go in the parking lot. So we sat out in the parking lot and started talking about, this, that, or what have you, and all other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, then when we actually closed on the building, they're supposed to do a walkthrough, kind of an inspection. And she says, Ronnie, go inside, go do it. I'm waiting right here. And she sat on the front porch. She was so scared to go in the building.
That's so funny.
So we did the walkthrough and all other stuff. And most of you guys will know that when the building had shut down, there were a ton of medical records that were still in the building.
Yes.
So the IRS was responsible to get rid of those. So what I had to do was walk through the building to make sure there were no medical records left in the building. And that was kind of the inspection I had to do. And I come out and I said, nope, they're all gone. And they spent thousands of dollars getting rid of those medical records. And then, the ones that they could destroy, they destroyed. Then the other ones were relocated to wherever they put them. But it was just really funny because, like I said, she wanted nothing to do with the building.
Right.
Like, nothing. So then we kind of, we signed the paperwork in the back of the building. And she said, congratulations. And I just remember it was probably, to be really honest with you, probably the most scary moment of my entire life because I just sunk my life savings into this building that you guys know what it looked like. That was literally caving in.
Oh, yeah, we slept in it a couple of times when it looked like that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I remember looking at Renee. Renee was a local that was actually part of the team for a while. And I remember looking at Renee, and the tears just started coming down my face. And she goes, "Are you happy?" And I said, "No, I'm scared to death." Said,
Like, what have I done?
I said, "Because I think I just bought a bunch of bricks that might cave in tomorrow." And she was like, "No, we're going to clean this up. Trust me, we'll take care of it." And and she did really, really, soothe me quite a bit. But it was really probably the most scariest investment I've ever made in my entire life. And then we, Renee and I and a couple other volunteers, we got a team together. And well, you know what the result is now? I mean, we moved 100 tons of garbage out of that building.
Jeez, I can
100 tons.
And a car and the red car.
And the car. And we didn't even include that in the 100 tons. I mean, so that was another.
For those of you,
tons.
for anybody that doesn't know, in case you haven't, I haven't heard of this location. If you even put it into a search engine, I think like the red car is one of the first pictures that ever pops up when you put that location in.
You're gonna see red cars. You're gonna see graffiti and signatures and paintings all over the walls, and a bunch of the ceiling was falling down back then.
Oh yeah. And it was kind of, it was funny because as an investigator, I would go in the building, the red car was there.
Yeah.
And it was funny because after we closed on the hospital, the old owner calls me and he says, hey, I want my car back. Well, legally, it was my property.
It's yours. Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a nice guy. I'm going to give him his car back because we all thought it was kind of a piece of junk anyways. So we roll out the car. And we roll it out to the back, and it's sitting there, and the tow truck comes. And I'm looking at it going, wow, this thing's in a way better shape than I thought it was. So then, of course, afterwards, I do a Google search and realize the damn thing was worth like $72,000.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, my God, what did I just do? But like I said, it was not mine. I bought the building. It wasn't
that was
my
just
car.
good. That was good karma.
That was your good karma.
That was your good karma.
So I gave it back to the gentleman who owned it. I don't know what he did. Hopefully he paid down the IRS what he owed, but it was just the right thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember because we went almost a year or 2 years in between visits because I think once you bought it, because I remember when the bidding happened because that was a popular topic.
We were all aware. Everybody knew the day they were bidding. We had dates. We had time. Like we all knew. Yeah. We were waiting for an announcement. There was a bunch
of rumors that were circulating. Yeah. But I mean, at the time, nobody really knew what was going on other than somebody wasn't paying taxes and the money that was being made by the location was not being spent on the location.
Right.
That's all we knew.
I could be incorrect, and I will say that. But if I'm not mistaken, 2 of the emails that got used to our previous visits received emails from someone telling them that there had been an investigation into the taxes of the location and the owners or something. And then like 2 weeks later is when we found out that they were actually already gone.
Oh yeah.
By the time.
Because we had something booked.
Well, we did, but it was the same emails we had used in booking the location before, and they received emails from someone we did not know. Like,
Right.
because
there was a lot of people or a lot of teams at that time.
Yeah.
That we knew that had already paid to do their investigation.
Yeah.
And then they got the same email as us, like, okay, how do I get my money back?
And it was their way of telling us we weren't getting our deposits back, is what it was. Like,
Right.
hey, they're not here anymore. We found these emails and we're not giving you your money back. So,
Yeah, so,
just so you know.
So what happened was that prior to it closing, there was a doctor who actually owned the hospital, and he owned clinics throughout Alabama and Tennessee.
Mhm.
And the reason why he got in trouble, and it's public knowledge, so what I'm saying is factual and it's public, but he wasn't paying payroll taxes for his nurses and doctors.
Yeah.
Well, because he owned the hospital, they went after all of his assets. And so that's really what happened. Primarily. But what you guys are talking about is that they had an event back, and I want to say it was like March 25th of 2017, I think. And it was with the Wraith Chasers. And what happened was the management team of Old South Pittsburg, in the state, in any state across the United States, you have to have a business license to operate a business.
Right.
Well, what happened was they set up this huge tent. They had all these people in the parking lot, and the police chief drove by.
Yeah.
And he was like, what the hell's going on here? Mm-hmm. So he got out of the car and he asked questions, and somebody said, oh yeah, there's a big event here, blah, blah, blah. The police chief said, well, are they charging money? And somebody said, yeah. So then, of course, he pulled the management team aside and said, where's your permits?
Yeah.
Where's your business licenses? And I guess they didn't have them. So the police department shut down the event. And I will tell you that one of the things that's really cool about the Wraith Chasers, they did not disappoint, because a couple of my staff members were actually at that event. They actually took them down the road and took them to another location and ended up hunting there. So I mean,
that was
kudos.
Cool.
Yeah. Kudos to the Wraith Chasers for like being real spur of the moment. But so that's what started the whole thing. And then, like I said, and then the IRS got a hold of it. And then luckily we ended up purchasing it.
So the initial domino thing started from the event that they were hosting without permits. And then they lost the money from the event because they broke it up, correct?
Well, no, really it really started prior to that, because the IRS was actually investigating the doctor who owned the hospital.
Right. Yeah.
And then what happened was you fast forward, and then you have this huge event out front with no business license. And then it was, like you said, it was just a domino effect. It was just one thing after the other.
Right.
And then from my understanding, what I heard was the police chief actually told them, just go to City Hall and get a permit. And I guess there was a big argument that went on, and I don't know what happened, because a lot of it's hearsay, but and so they decided not to get the permit. So the Wraith Chasers were like, hey, we've got 100 people here, we've got to do something. So they just moved down the road and ended up having it, I think, in Tracy City or something like that. So like I said, so kudos to them, because they didn't disappoint their guests, and it ended up working out really well for them. But in the meantime, that poor beautiful hospital is just sitting there, decaying, because at that point in time nobody was doing anything with it. Right.
Absolutely. So we're getting ready to take our first break. And when we come back, we're really going to dig deep, Mr. Ronnie. We're going to dig deep. We're going to get into the nitty gritty, because me and you had talked privately, and there's a lot of things that you would like to clarify. You already did it on your page, but we're going to re-clarify here. Sure. There's a lot of things that we have had other investigators want us to ask you. So we'll get right into it, but we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere, guys. We got Mr. Ronnie Dee with Old South Pittsburg and Harriman Hospital here. Wonderful guy. Just is phenomenal. His beard makes me jealous. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after these short messages.
If you're a fan of the paranormal world, then you'll love WLTK-DB Talk Radio. Talk shows bringing you the latest on everything paranormal, cryptozoological, metaphysical, true crime, psychic readings, and more. The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
Welcome back, guys. This is Twisted Ascension. Tonight we are with Mr. Ronnie Dee himself, president and owner of Old South Pittsburg Hospital and Harriman Hospital. What is the full title for Harriman?
Old Historic Harriman Hospital.
Old Historic Harriman Hospital. There we go. That is such a mouthful. My goodness.
The website is oldhistorichairmanhospital.com. So yeah, it didn't really change much in the whole scheme of things.
Well, there you go. So we were talking about before the break how you came about owning Old South, how you were on a team, you'd investigated many times. You bid on it, you won, you got it. You were scared shitless as soon as you bought it, but you got a group of amazing people to help you clean the hospital up. And for anybody who has never been, I'm telling you, you look at the old pictures and you go visit it now, it is night and day. It's like it was when it was still running. I mean, it's a phenomenal job. So whenever you're owning a location, because we helped run events, we've never owned a location ourselves, but we've helped run events. And I know how much work goes into just that itself. So let's kind of get into some of the legalities of it, because that's something that a lot of people don't know. So when you bought it, you have to have your business license to run events out of it. But when it comes to paranormal investigations, which I'm not going to say it's easy, but it was a little easier with Old South because the town was already used to the traffic.
Well, and actually, no, it was actually the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, Old South was a challenge. And a lot of people don't realize this, is that when I originally looked into the hospital, and this is going to segue right into what we were talking about, you and I, Sal. But when we were talking about going to purchase the hospital, the city was really against it. So was pretty much a lot of the township. And the reason being is and this is what we try to stress a lot, is that buildings, when they're active, they don't need horror stories. They don't need made up history. They don't need that kind of a thing. And the more and more I learned about Old South Pittsburg, the more and more I went, the more and more the management team, couple of management teams, because there were a couple of management teams prior to our ownership, was just really making up a lot of historical nonsense.
Yeah.
And they did it primarily to make the building look more, I don't know what the right
evil,
word is.
dark.
Yeah, evil, dark, scary,
dramatic.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, if anybody who visited Old South, that building was haunted long before it was shut down. I mean, we've had the opportunity to talk to doctors and nurses and people who worked at that hospital prior to shutting down. And the stories we've heard, there was no need for anybody to make up stories. But I think that the old management teams there thought that, we'll throw some of this in there and throw some of that in there. And we can make it even more like whatever, like you said, more scary of a location.
Yeah.
So we had to sit down. There was actually a group of us. There was a group of 4 of us that had to sit down with City Hall and everybody to convince them that what we're doing was beneficial not only for the hospital itself, but for the citizens of South Pittsburg and Marion County. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that we pay taxes on everything. You come, and a lot of people do this. Our rate is $600 a night. And then there's a $59 tax that's involved that goes directly to the city. And then, all that other stuff, you buy t-shirts, all that stuff, it's all taxed. The property taxes, all that stuff, we pay all those taxes. And that goes directly into the infrastructure of South Pittsburg. So that was kind of one of our selling points, was that, you got this big, beautiful building that's sitting here vacant. You got 2 choices. You can either let us buy it and make something out of it, or you're going to have to tear it down. And when you're looking at a building of that size, you're looking at a couple $1 million to tear it down. That's on taxpayers' revenue. That's money that taxpayers are going to pay. And Marion County is a decently wealthy county in Tennessee, but you still don't want, you and I don't want to pay a bill to knock a building down.
Right.
So we had spoke to them about that, and then once we got past kind of the money issues, then all of a sudden we started hearing about this, that, or whatever, and we heard anything from, and I'm going to be honest, anything from the rumors going around about illegal abortions. Everything from malpractice lawsuits to this, to that, to this, to that. And even it went as back as like the old owners telling people that there was an Indian slaughter underneath the hospital prior to the bill.
I remember somebody trying to tell us
told us that, and I just kind of looked down like,
I've never heard that.
It was, and it was like, and I was like you guys, I was listening, I was paying attention. I'm like, oh, really? And it did. From a paranormal point of view, or for somebody renting the building, like, ooh, that's kind of cool. You really do. But then you sit back and you think, and I'm like, oh, so we did a bunch of research and realized that 90% of what they were telling us wasn't true. And one of the coolest stories of all I've got to tell you guys is, and you'll know this story if you remember, but remember the maintenance man died in the basement?
Yes.
Okay, so we did an event one night at Old South Pittsburg. We had a paranormal public event, and there's a group of us actually sitting over at the little restaurant in Kimball, Tennessee. And we're all in our OSPH shirts. We're all pretty much paranormal hungover, Yeah. And we're all sitting there minding our own business. And there's this guy who's staring at me. I mean, just staring at me. And I had, I had the Old South Pittsburg owner shirt on, and he's staring at me, and his wife's staring at me, and they're kind of pointing at me, and I'm like, oh no. I didn't really know what to take of it because once again, Bible Belt, and there were people who were relatively new, and I'm just like, oh, I hope and. So he gets up, he walks over, and he says, hey, are you Ronnie? And I said, yes, sir. He says, you own South Pittsburg, right? And I said, yes, sir. Well, the hospital in South Pittsburg. I said, yes, sir. He says, I'm the maintenance man. And my mouth almost dropped through the table. I looked at him and I said, no, dude, you're dead.
Right.
And he says, no, I'm not. He introduced himself. His name was Art, gave us the whole backstory. I said, you've been dead for years. I've been investigating this building, and you died on the floor in the maintenance room of a heart attack. And his wife starts chuckling in the background. And she's like, no, he's very much alive. So it was so funny. So we actually invited him to sit down and chat with us for a little while and tell the stories of the hospital, told us hauntings of the hospital. There was a bunch of things that we know about of doctors and nurses. I mean, some things he were like, yep, that happened. Something he's like, oh my God. So we actually took him back to the hospital that afternoon because he wanted to see the hospital. He wasn't in it for many, many years. Right. And we're walking through the hospital, and all of a sudden the elevator dings. And he looks at me, stops dead in his tracks, and looks at me and goes, oh, did you put the elevators back on? I said, no, sir. They have no electricity, no power. He says, that's the elevator. And I was like, no way. How cool is that? You basically worked on those elevators, and he's in the building actually verifying that those elevators are still dinging with no power. And so it was really neat. But going back, like I said, that was one of the things that all of these stories that were being told. And if you look at the big scheme of things, and a lot of people believe you're in the right place at the right time and everything is, well, think about it. At that specific time, I'm at Cracker Barrel eating breakfast with our team. And the maintenance man is there of the building we just relatively bought a little while ago. Yeah. What are the odds?
Right.
You're like, oh, that's so cool. So we have this big banner on the wall that we have all the celebrities, like the Wraith Chasers and everybody signs. So I'm like, Art, you've got to sign our banner. So he signs it, Art Ross, not dead.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
I like that. I love that.
But that's what I mean. That's so we were kind of behind the eight ball to start with the building, because you've got old owners who are talking about this, whatever, and we even heard stuff about there was a pentagram put on the floor underneath the tile, and they're doing satanic rituals. We pulled up the tile, and there's no pentagram there. So I mean, all of these things that you hear about, we went through really carefully and made sure we debunked everything. And well, it was so bad because even my team and I went to the Historical Society, knocked on the door, and introduced ourselves, and she turned our back on us. She was like, we want nothing to do with you guys. And I was like,
What?
well, what? And she says, we heard what's going on over there. We know, the stories that are being told and blah, blah. I said, no, listen, I'm the new owner. I said, and you know what? That's not what we're here for. We're here for the truth. And she was like, no, get out. I mean, basically threw us out of the Historical Society.
Wow.
So a young lady named Leanne and Darla actually worked diligently for the next couple of months, kind of proving to them that, we want historical, validation. And so they opened up the doors to us about 4 or 5 months into owning the building. We sat down and chatted with her, and the stories that she told us about the rumors that were going around was just, I'm like, holy cow. So it really took us a lot of work to get the community behind us, the Historical Society behind us, the city behind us. And those are the things that I think that from a paranormal investigating point of view is that a lot of people don't realize that we love our industry. We love what we do for a living, but we're really looked on very, very misinformed. A lot of people, like I said, they thought we were sitting in the basement doing, sacrificing chickens. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do at all. And then the more involved the city got, and the more involved the people got, and the more inviting we were, people are like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Yeah. Like they realize that we're not doing those things that, that mainstream media is thinking we're doing.
You're doing it the respectful way and the professional way.
Right.
And we're bringing revenue.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're bringing revenue into their town. So
and that's exactly what I was going to say. So 5 years later, I'm really good with the fire department, really good with the chief of police. I'm really good with, City Hall. And you're exactly right. They look at us now. We got a little gas station that's right on the corner. Yeah. And every time I go in there, he thanks me. And I'm like, what's up, dude? He's like, the revenue that you're bringing into my little gas station. Yep. Just when your paranormal teams are there buying, whatever rock stars.
That's we know how great our investigations are be because we always get our lotto tickets there.
Yep.
We always that same gas station. That's what we do. It's part of the trip.
But that's the part of the infrastructure that the paranormal world brings to that these little towns don't realize until after we're in there. And then they see thousands of people coming to rent their hotel rooms and to, and then like I said, we pay our property taxes, we pay everything. And they're like, oh. And so it really, really helps that we do generate revenue for that, because we're paying school teachers' salaries. We're helping the police department buy another, squad car, all that stuff, because that's where our taxes go. Yeah. So it's very beneficial. And like I said, and now we get to keep a historic location and tell the truth about it, which means now it's kind of a really, really cool, part of the community. Right. And like I said, and it's neat too, because now we get a lot of people who drive by, like you said, and they're like, wow, the building's really starting to come along. You're planting trees, you're putting flowers, and you're being a good part of the community. And that's something that, we just planted a bunch of peach trees. Hopefully next year this time we'll be eating on peaches.
That's awesome.
But so I mean, we're doing those kind of things to make our community look better as well. So and we're also making sure that the community knows that us as paranormal investigators are not walking around conjuring up demons and devils and doing the wrong things that they're seeing on some of the movies out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could talk for the next 8 hours on para TV and para celebrities and some of the stuff, that, because I know you've dealt with them. You've had a couple in and out of your building, between TikTok influencers to YouTubers to actual celebrity status, like the Wraith Chasers and Amy Bruni, I think, was there at one point. A bunch of people have been in and out of your hospital. And, it's a good thing what you're doing. You really took an eyesore in the community and you turned it into almost a legacy for that town. From here until whenever, Old South Pittsburg Hospital is kind of a focal point of that town again. Where it's not shunned away like, it's haunted, they do events, but it's kind of sketchy do you see what they're doing? Look at them peaches. Look at all them peaches, whatever the case may be. And it's, Mr. George, another great dude, he said it best earlier. You are one of the few diamond in the rough that actually cares and has passion, not just for the history of the location, but for the building itself. Like you are making sure that the building's taken care of, the spirits are being taken care of, the history is being told properly, but also the community, which is what most of us in this field want to do, is to help the community and to help educate the community. Right. And that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
Well-
You are living the dream, sir.
Well, it comes with a lot of hard work, but
I'm sure.
you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we live as a community, we die as a community. I mean,
Yep.
and I'm only as strong as my best volunteers. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, and a lot of times it does. My heart and soul is in those buildings, and it's something that, like I said, I get really upset when there's a paranormal team that comes back and they're like, oh, we got nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you got nothing? Like nothing at all? And they're like, I said, well, it's like fishing. Sometimes, so then they'll leave and I'll walk through the building like, what's going on? Spirits, where's my residence today? And we all know that you do have those slow days, but and a lot of times, we'll get some, you walk through the building and, there's just groups or people out there who don't, I guess, investigate the right way or whatever too. So the buildings become a little more quiet. And then there's groups out there like the coolest thing ever. We had a public investigation just, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago at Old South Pittsburg. And what I do is I generally sit at the front door and I greet everybody. And when they're leaving, say goodnight. How was your night? We had 54 people in the building. And we kind of do an exit interview with everybody. How'd you do? Blah, blah, blah. Out of the 54 people, 38 of them were either touched or whispered in their ears.
They had the time of their lives.
And out of the 52 investigators that we had in the building, 4 of them were at Old South Pittsburg before. So we had this big group of newbies that came to Old South Pittsburg, and they left with smiles on their faces. They left with, and those are the days I'm like, yeah, we're actually doing something right. But to watch people walk out the door and going, yeah, and one lady was like, she was sitting in the ER waiting area, and she said she got up from the chair because somebody was actually stroking the back of her head. And she looked at her husband, and her husband's hands were between his legs, like on his thighs, and she got all creeped out. I'm like, no, that's what we're doing. That's the object of this.
Yeah.
And so so it's really cool. And like I said, I mean, those are the days that I look back and I'm like, it's all that hard work and all that dedication that we do to the building. When somebody has an experience like that, it all pays off.
Right,
That's
absolutely.
really what we're doing it for.
Well, I mean, and just like you said, investigating anybody that's been in this field for any amount of time. We went to one of the most haunted locations in New York, of that town. Drove 15 hours to go, paid the money, investigated. We have a Northern Ascension, Ohio chapter that's a part of us.
We linked up with them and took off.
And you know what? We didn't have much of anything happening that night. But it's like fishing,
But the next night at our next location, we did.
Yeah. But we also didn't know that the team before us that was there the night, I mean, they investigated hard. Like hard. And I'm like, hey, it got drained. It's just part of it.
And they got some stuff.
Yeah, they got some stuff.
Right.
It's like, well, y'all showed out for them.
I'm glad y'all did.
That's okay. We slept good.
Yeah,
we slept very well. But it was, to us, though, yeah, it's a little upsetting if you don't get evidence, but we enjoy the experience of it.
Well,
we
also know because we've been to several places and we've been to places so many different times that like you're not always going to. So I don't think anybody like in the group we went with, everybody knew like every time you go somewhere, you may or you may not. If you I mean,
it's just kind of part of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think too that spirits and residents and buildings, we call ours residents.
Residents.
Where we
love it.
But you also have to understand that they need to build trust for the investigators coming in.
Yep.
And I mean, if somebody looks a little off or a group looks a little off, they might not have quite the experience that like a group that like we've got groups that will literally rent OSPH every 4 months.
Yeah.
And it's funny because every time they leave, they're getting something more and more and more and more. And it's and like I said, it's that addiction that they're doing. But
they built a friendship.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say they build a friendship with our residents, and then our residents show. They show up. They're like, oh, we know them. This is so and so, and this is Jason Henley, and this is so. So they start building that rapport with that group, and then they get all sorts of activity. And I think a lot of times too is, and I'll be honest with you, I've been to, like you, I've been one of the most haunted locations supposedly in America. I have been there 5 or 6 times myself. I've never had an experience in that building.
Yep.
Is it active? Of course it is, because other people have had great experiences in that location. That location just doesn't like me.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
And
I
that's
don't know
just
why they won't come out with me, but but it doesn't mean that it's not active. It just means it's not active for me.
Exactly.
That's what we tell a lot of people. Like, hey, you can go up and meet anybody on the street, and you're either going to like their vibe or you're not, or they're going to like you and they're not. If you're not going to walk into a room and sit there and have somebody force you to speak to them if you don't like them, it's the same. It's the same with spirits or y'all's residents. You know, if a team comes in or an individual comes in and, as we call it, just has a stank attitude, I wouldn't talk to you either. What makes you think they want to talk to you?
Right. Absolutely. And like I said, I think a lot of it is the energy coming into the building. I think, you know, if you have that positive energy when you're walking into the building and you're not coming in with that kind of like, I think, you know, emotions and everything kind of co-interact. And if you don't come in with that right spiritual kind of mood, they may not want to, like, our residents may not want to waste their time talking to you.
Absolutely.
Right. And, you know,
absolutely.
I mean, one of the things I think is really funny is that if a disbeliever comes in the building, why am I going to spend my time trying to make you believe?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that people who come in with that open mind, like, you know, this is really going to happen. I think you get better evidence when you actually believe in something versus when you don't. Because I'm not going to spend my time, you know, on a talk show convincing you that, you know, that spirits, if you don't believe in it, you're not going to be convinced. And I'm not going to sit here wasting my time trying to explain it to you.
Exactly.
And I think our residents are kind of the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and that's we know all about Old South and most of its residents. I've only had an encounter with 3 or 4 of them every time we've went. It's been the same 3 or 4, and they've all been good. Like, I mean, funny, sometimes inappropriate funny, but still, you know, it's always been a great time. But I've never been to Harriman though, and that's a newer purchase for you.
Correct.
So let's kind of deep dive into that real quick. You know, what made you buy it? Was it, again, just kind of destiny slapped you in the face and was like, here you go?
It's kind of the same thing. So Leanne Rogers, which is she does all of our PR and our marketing and Facebook with her and Brooke. And so she sent me like this message one day that said that Harriman Hospital was going to be demolished, blah, blah, blah. And it was going to cost, once again, taxpayers about $12 million for them to knock it down. They wanted to turn it into a parking lot, blah, blah, blah. So she sent me the newspaper clipping. And I was like, well, Leanne, give them a call. Let's just see what they want to do.
Right.
So Leanne gave them a call. We set up a meeting with City Hall. I think we went to probably 6 or 7 City Hall meetings. And we gave them kind of what we wanted to do with the building, kind of the uses that we use for it. And talking about skeptical, it was really a challenge. So we ended up like talking to them, going to City Hall meetings. We went before the residents of Harriman. Same thing, kind of bounced the, you know, finances off the city in terms of what it's going to cost for them to knock it down, you know, historical ramifications of the building, yada yada. So they started kind of listening towards the end of it. So then what happened? It was really kind of funny. So I'm at Old South Pittsburg, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing at the time, but all of a sudden I get a phone call. And Chief Jordan, which is the actual chief of South Pittsburg Police Department, he calls me and says, "Hey, Ronnie, I heard you bought a new hospital." Remember, we're in negotiations with the city of Harriman, and nobody else knows but the city of Harriman and myself and 2 other, Leanne and Brooke. So I'm like, well, how did you know? He says, well, dumbass, I'm the police chief of South Pittsburg. I know everything. And I was like, okay. So he says, well, I just want to let you know, he says, that I just got off the phone with the city council and all this other stuff. And they were basically vetting me. They were vetting our business. They were vetting this. They pulled our tax rate. I mean, they really did their job to make sure that we weren't this fly-by-night company who's going to come in, buy the building and basically run away.
Right.
So once again, we went before City Hall. We realized that there was a lot of work to do. Most people were on board on City Hall, but there were a couple that we had to win over. So basically what happened was I said, here's your opportunity. I said, I will comp you guys tickets. Come out and let's do an investigation at Old South Pittsburg. We can see, you know, you can get a feel for what it's doing, so it was kind of neat. So we did, I want to say it was probably March, I think, somewhere around there. So it was a full house. I think we had like 80 people in the building. And it was just, like I said, everything kind of clicked together. I was scared to death. I was literally shaking when they walked in the building because I was so nervous. So they walked in the building. everybody, we had a lot of people in Old South Pittsburg who are regulars. And so they walked around and interviewed people. Like they literally talked to our guests. They did the investigation. And then we went back to the gift shop where, they looked at me and they said, "We're sold." And I said, "Sold on what?" She says, "This is just amazing." She says, "What you guys do here, the professionalism that you're doing, and just everything." She says, "This is what we want in our city." And I said, so we sat down, we talked about it. And I said, "You've got to understand that, like that night we had people, believe it or not, doing a private or a public investigation from New Zealand. They had flown all the way to the States to do, and we just happened to be one of the, we just happened to be one of the locations that they picked to do on their little world tour."
That's so cool.
So she actually talked to them, and she's like, "I can't believe the reach you guys have." And I said, "That's not only OSPH, but I said, that's the paranormal world." I said, "We go everywhere." I said, "But remember that being generated revenue because they're at a hotel, they're eating dinner, they're bringing gas, they're doing all of their stuff."
Right.
And I said, "And we're saving the taxpayers once again about $12 million. And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "So we ended up going back to Harriman. We inked out a deal and ended up buying the hospital. I think we closed on it in February. It took us about 7 months to clean it up and get it ready for investigating. And then we opened up and we do all sorts of things like hide and go seek in the building, and we do investigations. We have Hollywood there quite frequently. They're shooting movies there. As a matter of fact, at the end of this month, they're shooting another horror movie there.
Nice.
PBS was out there to shoot a documentary. So it's neat because we had Hollywood out there, and the movie is called, what's it called? I forgot what the movie's called. It'll come to me throughout what do you call it? But it was a major motion picture. They brought, it was awesome. The town of Harriman was buzzing. There was probably 140 people on set. And you have to remember, that's 140 people who needed hotel rooms. So it was kind of funny because we have this little bakery next door to us, and it was called the Pastry Princess. And she looked at me after they all left, and she said, "Thank you." And I said, "For what?" She says, "We did a year's worth of sales in 3 days."
Yeah.
Oh, Crystal said the movie is called Grounded.
Correct.
Grounded.
So so she was like, that's such an injection to the local economy. And like I said, so not only did we just save taxpayers money, but we made everybody in that area tax money. And all that other stuff. So it works out really, really good. And like I said, once again, we get to save another historic location from being down and turned into a parking lot, which we don't have enough parking lots across America as it is right now. So like I said, it was just, and like I said, once again, we assembled a team there, and they worked night and day to keep up that building, to keep it clean. Old South Pittsburg is about 68,000 square feet. Harriman is 186,000 square feet.
Wow.
So it's nearly 3 times the size. It is huge.
I really thought that it was smaller than Old South.
Did you look at a picture?
I guess judging by the pictures that I've seen, it does kind of look like it's smaller, but I was like, it's got to be much larger.
Yeah. So if you look at South Pittsburg, you see the 3-story building in the front, and then the hospital is really behind that building. Harriman is the same way. It's a 4-story building in the front, and then the back of it is a full city block. It's literally a full city block.
Jeez.
So it's just ginormous. I've owned it for over 2 years now, or a year and a half, or 2 years. Time flies, but I still get lost in the building. Like literally,
I can imagine.
Like my crew, where's the cafeteria? Which direction do I go?
Right.
So did Harriman have the reputation similar to Old South, or
No, we started it from the ground up. Harriman had the reputation of being haunted prior to being closed. We talked to a bunch. As a matter of fact, I've got 2 or 3 ladies on my team who actually were involved with that hospital. One of them, I think, worked there for 30 plus years. Wow. But the stories that they tell us about the activity that happened prior to it closing is just amazing. We've even had the FBI, prior to us owning it, would come in and do, they would do, what do you call that? Where they bring the guns in and the dogs in, and the hostage situations. And even they tell us the interaction that they had with the residents in the building. And some of them are just, I'm looking back yeah, right, you're just telling a story. Yeah. And they're like, oh, no. I was there. Like one of them involved the dog where they were actually, and I'm going to get this wrong, but they were training the dog. And so they hide. And I guess one of the spirits actually
search.
So one of the spirits actually tapped one of the police officers on the shoulder and said, "Found you." And when he turned around to look, there's nobody there. And this is an FBI agent.
Wow.
I mean, this is somebody, you know, who like, when an FBI agent tells you something like that, you kind of really listen.
Yeah.
And, but then going on, like talking to more of them, yeah, they've all had these really wild spirits or real wild experiences where some of them actually were chasing residents down the hall, thinking that, you know,
they were real people
building during their, you know, during their training purpose or during their training.
Wow.
So kind of
That's
a neat
cool.
location.
That's really neat. We haven't deep dove into Harriman. We kind of looked on the website just to see about how much it would cost, you know, similar where it was located.
Right.
But I mean, we didn't know much of the reputation, which we're the type of people that we try not to look at others teams that go into a location because I don't want a seed planted of expectation, you know. Sure. But now I'm definitely like even more intrigued because I want to play hide and go seek. I want to go play hide and go seek. Like, let's play. I love playing, like at Old South Pittsburg, we had a kickball and it was a glow one. You put a little glow stick in there. And one of the children residents, or it might have been an adult residence, but we heard kids giggling. So I assumed it was children playing kickball with me in the hallway.
Yes.
Oh, sorry guys. I hit the wrong
No, you're
button.
good. You're okay.
I was trying to get, so the security system's going off at one of the hospitals. So I was trying to, we've got.
Oh, no, you're fine.
No, we got a group in there tonight. And I forgot to turn the security system off. So
okay. Okay. No worries.
It was letting me know where they were at. So
no worries. But we're definitely going to have to check it out. So, I mean, you kind of opened up the segue though. Now you have both hospitals and you've gotten everything. You got your business license, your permits, everything's in order. The community's loving you. Everybody is A-okay. So what went through your brain, or was it because you were an investigator for so long? What made you land on the policies that you have in place for both of your locations? You know, whether it be film waivers or you can do this and you can't do that. What made the impact of you to these are my rules and these are what I'm going to stick with?
Well, it's always kind of a work in progress because as technology changes and you have to remember, like a good example is, let's take Destination Fear. I'm going to use them as an example, but you know, they were a TV show at first and, you know, now they're on YouTube. So things are really progressing like in a different direction than what I'm used to. I mean, I'm 50 some years old. YouTube to me is still new. I mean, doing StreamYard is really new to me. But things are really, really changing. So as kind of the industry changes, so do our policies. And one of the things that's really important to myself and my staff is that we keep the historical value of both locations accurate. And the thing that's really sad is, and a lot of us know this, is that our industry is kind of going down a dark path. And it's really kind of a shame. And it's something that I've seen, you know, I've been doing this for over 20 years, not owning locations, but being a paranormal investigator. And I think there's always been a little bit of that demonic value that, you know what I mean? That's always been in the paranormal. But the problem with is it's taking front and center now. And that's the part that really we're trying to protect the buildings from. Because listen, myself and my staff spend hundreds of hours at both of our locations, cleaning, fixing, you know, mopping floors, all their stuff. And if there was something demonic or if there was something malevolent in those buildings, I'm going to be the first one to put it up on the market and sell it, because I don't need that stuff in my life. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's plenty of bad out there without throwing that kind of into it. But going back to that, so what happens is you kind of mix that demonic value with history, and they kind of co-mingle each other. And so what we did is like I guess kind of when I started doing it, history and all that other stuff wasn't really quite as important as the paranormal investigating. You know, you'd go in, you'd make this video together and you throw it together and show all your friends and be like, check this out, I was at Harriman Hospital and blah, blah, blah. Well, now it's kind of the point where there's a lot of people who are trying to do clicks and views and all their stuff. Well, you and I both know that we sit in buildings for 12 hours at a time in the dark. Sometimes it's not really that exciting. So let's throw a tagline in there. Let's say it's the scariest building in the world, or I was attacked by a demon, or I was done by this. Well, unfortunately, being in the Bible Belt, we promised our local governments that wasn't the direction us paranormal investigators go down.
Right.
And quite frankly, it's really not. I mean, none of us go into a building with the expectation that we're demon hunting or demon looking or whatever.
Yeah.
We're
Right.
really going in there to look at the residents, to look at history. So when we purchased Harriman, that was one of their biggest concerns, was that, you know, we watch this stuff on TV, we, you know, and all this demon stuff and all this stuff. I said, no. The group of people that we have come to the hospitals, they're not into that. They're into paranormal investigating. They're into talking to the residents. They're talking surgeons that passed away in the hospital, that kind of a stuff, that we want to keep it that way. So basically what we had to do is, at the beginning was fine. We didn't have any issue. But then as time went on, we noticed that there were some YouTubers out there and some other people who were throwing those, you know, world's most demonic hospital, world's most this, that. So we kind of came up with a policy that basically is a filming policy. We want, like yourselves, to come to the hospital and share as much evidence as you can. I mean, if you get a full body apparition video walking down the hall, please put it on Facebook, put it everywhere. What we want to do is we want to steer clear from, like a good example, Jim at OSPH. I know you guys have heard the stories. But the thing is that historically, the stories that we know about on the internet are not really Jim. So what we want to do is, like, if you're putting your evidence out there, like, let's say you got a 20-minute EVP session and you want to clip the 15-second EVP or 3-minute EVP and throw it on Facebook, have at it. We want you to share your experiences at both locations. But now let's say you are a YouTuber, or even yourself or myself, and we're going to put together an hour video, and we're going to put the history in there, we're going to put our evidence in there, and then we're going to put a recap in the end. All we're asking is that you send us that video prior to you dropping it on social media, so we can look at it just for historical purposes. We're not going to criticize your evidence. We're not going to, we're not going to call you out as fakers or debunk you or whatever. Whatever your evidence is your evidence. We're not going to debate that. But like a good example is, and we talked about this, Caden, the other day, was that we had very well-known YouTubers come to the building. And you know what? I had a lot of respect for them when they came. They were very professional. They were good. They did their investigation. From what I saw, there wasn't really any faking going on. There wasn't anything that, a lot of people claim that's going on in YouTube nowadays. And I got a really good sense of feeling that they were good people from them. Well, they dropped a trailer on YouTube and we watched the trailer. And one of my staff members sent it to me and said, look at this. Well, in the middle of the trailer, there was a room where there was a chalkboard on the wall and it had satanic messages on it. And I was like, wait a minute here. That's not in Harriman. I'm like, so we spent the better part of the afternoon looking for that room.
Right.
Couldn't find the room. So I sent a little message to the YouTube creator. And I said, hey, you've got in the trailer something about satanic stuff going on in our building. I said, that's not us.
Right.
He says, oh. So he took, and this is the professional end of it. I will say these guys were top notch. He said, let me take it down and review it and whatever. So he took it down immediately. It was off YouTube in 35 seconds.
Right.
So we found out that he actually Googled Harriman Hospital and he got this clip off of YouTube or off of the internet. And he inserted it into the middle of his trailer, realizing that, you know what, it was actually a hospital in New York. It wasn't even us.
Wow.
And so I was like, dude, I'm not upset or anything, but this is what we're trying to make sure doesn't happen. Right. And so, but like I said, very professional. They took it down. So there was actually a segment in his 1-hour video that talked about that room. And I said, dude, that's got to come down. I said, you can't talk about a room that doesn't exist in our building. They pulled it out of they inserted something else in, they put it on YouTube, and we were happy. They took that out. And that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for those inaccuracies. We're looking for the keywords like demon or devil or whatever. So those don't need to be in our industry. We don't have to, the buildings sell themselves. They're active enough. And like I said, and most importantly, we don't want rumors going around about Indian slaughters when they never happened, or, malpractice. And the thing that's really important is with Harriman's only been closed 13 years. So you have to remember, we've got a lot of nurses and doctors and people who are in that hospital who are still alive working right down the road. Yeah. And these doctors and nurses, that was their home. This is the place they spent 15 hours a day in, making sure that we were healthy. and we don't want that reputation of their legacy being tarnished.
Right.
Because somebody wants some what do you call it, some clicks or whatever on YouTube to make it look
Clickbait, yeah.
bigger than it really is.
What is it
So,
you call it?
I call it
Pay-per-view.
We are pay for views.
Yeah.
Right.
We're in that era of the field, and just like you said, between TikTok and YouTube, and I don't know, it's like an Amazon thing, but it's only for paranormal people.
Oh, Paraflex.
Yeah. And I've never watched Paraflex. I've never subscribed. I know some of the people that have their stuff on there, but my problem is just like you, when you get into the people who are able to make the videos or they do episodes or whatnot, if there's not a film waiver in place by said location, like what you have, if it's not in there, like, hey, you can put out raw evidence all day long, but if you're editing a video or as soon as you add something to it, like, let us review it to make sure that you're not saying that, Mr. Jim in the basement is actually a demon named George, like, we're just going to make sure we don't have any rumors.
Right.
I mean, and it's just kind of the way that it has to be. I hate that it has to be that way, but we're in the technology babies are growing up. They're here. We're young. We're 32 and 33, but we didn't grow up with internet until way later.
Right.
I remember when my high school got it.
Yeah. I was in high school when we got it.
It was a big deal.
But still, unfortunately, and even kids, we have an 11-year-old. He watches Paranormal Caught on Camera, but he's watched us enough to where he knows what's real and what's not. It's just entertainment.
Right.
And he gets frustrated whenever we're on a podcast and we're talking about something similar to this. And he's like, Dad, Mom, why do people have to fake it? Why do they have to make something so much worse? Isn't it cool enough that they're talking to a spirit already? Like, that's cool. Why do you have to make them scary? I'm like, dude, I don't know. That's a good question, though. I wish that everybody would think that way.
Well, and don't get me wrong. The majority of people out there are doing it right. I mean, the majority of the people are really great people. Yeah. There's just a small percentage, like you said, who like to embellish things and throw taglines in there to get those people involved in it. And, there's nothing wrong with it, I guess, if you put for entertainment purposes only, or, something that because the problem is like I said, we don't want that reputation of all of us running through these buildings, conjuring stuff up.
Yep.
That is far from the truth. That's not what we want. And I guarantee you that you guys, myself, and the majority of these people who are doing, if they actually ran into a demon, could you really imagine what their response would be?
Some of the ones that I've heard, I've wondered, like some of them I've heard say, oh my gosh, that's what that is. Yeah. You would never guess what we ran into. We dealt with it for 6 hours the other night. I'm like, okay, so what'd you do? Tell me what you did. What did you do?
And here's kind of my philosophy, I guess, and I don't really know, but what the heck's a demon doing in an abandoned 860,000 square foot hospital?
High five with that one.
See, and
that's the part that I don't understand is that. So just in my world, I do believe in God. I'm kind of like skeptical about really demons and evil. I think human beings are probably more evil than any demon will ever be. But so I am, if you go down the chain and you say God, angels, Satan himself, and then demons. So I'm in theory the fourth most powerful non-entity in the world or whatever. What the heck am I doing in a hospital that sees a couple, 10,000 people or whatever a year? Right. Why am I not at Six Flags Great America making roller coasters fall off the rails and, you know what I mean? Making an impact on evil, not sitting. And like I said, and I don't know, I've never personally experienced a demon myself. I've never personally experienced anything evil than some human beings that I've met in life. But you know what? Like I said, if me, from just an evil point of view, if I wanted to do a bunch of danger and a bunch of damage, I'm going to do like that guy did in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, I'm going to buy a gun and I'm going to sit in a hotel room and shoot as many people as I can. I'm not going to go to an abandoned hospital and hope that 6 people walk in the door and do an investigation and possess one of them.
Right.
That's just, what I'm saying? That just doesn't make sense to me. It's not logical.
Why is it that, and I probably should not ask this, I'm going to, it's very logical in the way that he just explained it. It's very easy to understand. I'm having a hard time understanding why so many people don't think, like, they really think it's logical to say that there's a demon somewhere like that, or somewhere there's other places that they do that. Like, what logic are you using at all?
Like, here's the way that I believe. Alyssa believes kind of close to me, but hers is still a little different. Because since we're talking about the demon thing, I don't believe in demons on a biblical sense. I think the term is completely overused. I think that it's much like somebody that has zero emotions going around saying "I love you" to everybody that they meet. It holds zero ground anymore.
Right.
But biblically, if you believe in the Bible, if you're a Christian, you believe in demons biblically. Why do you think that if you did come across a demon, why is it only going to scratch you 3 times? These are the same beings that, according to the Bible, went around and possessed people, made them do some horrific things, went toe to toe with Jesus himself a couple of times. They didn't go toe to toe, but they challenged, they challenged him. But still, you think that
He's going to scratch you.
They're just going to scratch you 3 times, or knock 3 times on the wall. Like that's.
Or
it's
make
not
some
it.
jumbled.
It's
backwards ABC things.
Fortunately, unfortunately, we've dealt with some truly evil things within this field. They were not demons, but they were negative energies, negative entities. We've came across them very rarely, maybe 3. 3 in my entire life that I've ever truly was like, that was evil. 2 of them, no, 1. One of them was a human. Like, he was just a
dick,
a nasty guy in real life, and he was nasty in death.
Yeah.
Right.
The other 2 predated, far beyond me. But I don't get frustrated. I guess it's one of those, like you said, for entertainment purposes means for entertainment purposes.
Yes. Right.
You have to be careful. Sorry, went off on a tangent, but
I
I
get primarily upset about it because, like I said, you're labeling a historic building that has been nothing but good to people. I mean, a hospital is a place where people unfortunately lose their lives, but for the most part, it's a healing center.
Yeah,
it's where you and I go to feel better, and there's hundreds of people in that building who on a daily basis are saving our lives. Well, now suddenly it's closed and it's taken over by demons. No, wouldn't that be the opposite? Because wouldn't it be like still a wholesome place? I mean, isn't that kind of energy ingrained into the walls? And so I don't like the fact that we're giving a lot of these great locations out there this label when we really shouldn't. And world's most demonic, this, that, or whatever. And I'm kind of a firm believer that, if I ever meet John Wayne Gacy in the afterlife, as an example, the guy wasn't nice to begin with. Do you think that now that he's passed away and he's a resident of wherever, that all of a sudden he's going to be all, unicorns and flowers? No, he's still a killer.
Yeah.
He still was a manipulative kind of guy who killed children or young men. He's not going to change. So if you're a jerk in real life, you're going to be a jerk in the afterlife.
Exactly.
And I think that's what we deal with. And you know what? Maybe some of these residents, they just had enough. They've had enough of people asking them questions, and they're like, all right, I'm just going to be a jerk to this guy, and maybe he'll go away.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, back to your policies, that's why, I'm going to say, that's why you had to do your film waiver, to keep people from going around saying those kind of things. Because that is, most people probably view it as, yes, it is just clickbait. It is for views, but it's also a very dangerous rhetoric for these teams to put out there for the community. Like you said, you had to fight tooth and nail to prove, no, that's not what I'm wanting. So you got to keep those people at bay.
And see with OSPH was a really different animal, because there's, if you Google it right now and you go on there, there's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of really bad things that were said about the hospital. And a good paranormal researcher is going to sit down with my staff, and they're going to talk to other people and try and get the truth besides what's on the internet. But then there's groups out there who will just copy and paste, and they'll go off the history that's already there. So that's why we're asking that you just send us that video so we can be like, hey, you know what, we know that we found this off XYZ, you know, website, but here's what we really learned.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, could you change that? Because we don't want people to think that, you know, there's a barrel ground into the hospital and, you know, this is why it's so active, because that's really far from the truth.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we keep that history accurate. But I mean, like I said, as for what people come up with evidence, that's your thing. We're not trying to steal it. We're not trying to cheat you out of it. As a matter of fact, I think we just had an incident a couple of weeks ago, or not even, with a group that we do memes on our Facebook pages all the time to keep people kind of coming back to it. And we borrowed one from, I think they were called Dream Seekers Paranormal. And she reached out to me and she's like, hey, this is our meme. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, we just took it off Google. She says, well, could you? So we tagged them in it. We're like, yeah, this is from. So that's what I'm saying is if there's something out there, we're going to use it. We're going to say, hey, Dream Seekers Paranormal, this is their meme. Congratulations. This is great. We want to give the groups credit when they come up with something like that. But what we don't want to do is we want to steer clear of, you know, any negativity that was brought up, you know, 5-7 years ago or whatever about history that's not necessarily true. So that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, that's fair. That's fair. Now, I do remember the last time that we went, we were a little bummed about. At the time, it was a completely misunderstanding, and had we have inquired further from the staff members that were there, you know, it would have been settled and done. But, you know, at the time we were told no live streaming, you know, Facebook live streaming. And it was a little bum, but I'm like, hey, no big deal. That's cool. They said we could go outside and do it like on smoke breaks and stuff.
Right.
But you do actually allow live streams inside.
We do. Yeah, what we do now is we actually monitor the live stream and once again, we monitor the live stream because as a good example, we had an issue a year ago or so at Harriman where somebody was live streaming and we had a psychic in the building and she was talking about stuff that happened in the building that we couldn't verify. Yeah. And it was bad stuff. It was stuff that no community wanted to hear about. And like I said, if you're going to live stream that without any, you know, background, you're basically telling a community that there is somebody in the building who's doing some awful things. Yeah. So I instructed the team that they had to shut the live down, that they had to go a different direction because what they were saying was damaging to the community. And, you know, they weren't very happy about it. But at the end of the day, I can't, you know, we've got a reputation of a town to uphold. And when somebody's running around saying these things that they were saying with no news clipping articles about it, no, you know, like I said, I've got a couple of staff members who've been with the hospital for 30 years and she heard it. She calls me going, did you hear this? Did you hear this? Did you? Like, I'm taking care of it. But you can't say some of those things that she was saying or they were saying without there being ramifications or something that come back on us.
So is that like brings up a really good point though, with people who are gifted, whether they be medium, psychics, whatever the case may be. You know, like you did say, you know, whatever your evidence is, you can put it out there. But as soon as you put historical facts behind it, like we need to review it first. Right. So when it comes to people who go in that are mediums and maybe you just meet the team and you're like, hey, you know, is there any mediums here? And somebody raises their hand. You'd be like, okay, that's awesome. Glad you're here. Just know if you plan on doing a reading, you can't go live for it. Instead, though, you know, kind of tell us, record it, send it to me, and I'll see if I can validate it for you before we put it out to the public.
I don't even mind a medium coming into the building and doing a live as long as she uses her ability to make sure that what she's saying isn't going to be damaging to the community that she's doing it in. So, and I know, like, you know, a good psychic will know the difference between, you know, good information and bad information. And if there's a psychic out there who sits in the building and says, oh, I'm getting this feeling of, I don't know what, let's just say, you know, somebody throwing somebody down the staircase and killing people or whatever. Hopefully that medium would have enough common sense to kind of keep that inside them until the live is over. And then after the live is over, actually sit down with the group or the team or their team and kind of bring it up to them and say, hey, this is kind of one of the things I was getting in the building, you know, but before I go out publicly with it, let's verify it, you know, because like I said, it could be really damaging. I mean, you know, and like I said, when we were at South Pittsburg, one of the things that a medium came in and she said, that there was an orderly or a candy striper, somebody who was I forgot what exactly she said, but basically was killing patients at Old South Pittsburg. And I said, but she was very professional. She didn't do it live. She took me aside and she said, can you validate this, or can you? And I said, to be really honest with you, I said, I've never heard of that before, but I'll make some phone calls and find out. And I think that's the way it should be done, is a perfect. Now, I don't have an issue with somebody coming in the building, a medium or a psychic, and saying, actually contacting one of our spirits and getting information from them. And, like, let's just say a psychic comes in and they're talking to Buddy. And Buddy's like, yeah, I passed away. I was in the building. Snake bites. That's a very neutral death. It's not really anything that's like.
So if it's gruesome, or if it's,
right.
Just like shock and awe,
right.
you would prefer any team, whether it's a spirit box or a medium, just kind of come to you and be like, this is what we got. We didn't ask for it. This is what we got. Do with it as you please.
Right.
But do you have any kind of, because there is a very fine line with that, because you're not gagging teams, but you're also like, hey, we have to be careful because I have this with the city. And as soon as this gets out with the city.
Well, I think it's just like anything else. I mean, you and I barely know each other, but let's say Ralph walks up to me and says, that Camden guy, blah, 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 and talks bad about you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go live and be like, oh yeah, so-and-so told me that Camden's a really bad guy and he's doing this, that, or whatever out there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, hey dude, what's going on? Let's sit down and talk about this. Well, I think when a psychic gets something that negative at a location, whether it's us or anywhere, and they get something really that negative, I think that's something that should be discussed off camera and kind of privately, so that, and once again, and like, let's say we get Betsy, the psychic, in, and she comes into Harriman and she gets this information that we didn't know about. And let's say it is something that's a little bit, off color or whatever. Well, if it's true and we can actually, get that information, then yes, share it. I mean, because it's something that really did happen, and it is a historic value, whether it's negative or positive. But I think, like I said, the thing is that we just want to verify that information prior to somebody going with it. Because, like I said, Harriman's only been closed for 13 years. So you can really potentially ruin somebody's family name. You can ruin somebody's livelihood if they're still working down the street. You know what I mean? There's a lot more to it than just standing in in a hospital that's been closed down for 13 years and coming up with this information and talking about it live on TV, because the problem is live you can't take back. So once you make that statement, it's really hard to rewind. And I just don't want to be in that situation where I've got to tell somebody that, I'm sorry, we had somebody in the building who's basically claiming that you're doing, the wrong thing. So.
Well, I mean, and and I hope it didn't come across as me trying to poke and prod you, but the way that you just described it and the way that you just explained yourself was perfection, because there would be somebody listening, and had I not said what I said or asked you a different way and you didn't explain it that way, then be like, oh, well, he's trying to gag. No. It's a liability. It's a liability.
We want the truth to be told out there about both locations, about any location that we purchase, but there's a time and a place for it. You know what I mean? And the time isn't, the proper time is not to do it live and put it out there until it's verified. You know what I mean? Just like I said, I would never, Ken, walk around talking about you and saying, oh, I know this, because it would ruin your life. It could basically ruin your life.
Absolutely.
Well, the same thing with our residents is I don't want somebody walking around talking about, Dr. So-and-so did malpractice and they were doing, you know what I mean? Because Dr. So-and-so might have relatives that are still alive and that legacy is still there. But on the other hand, if Dr. So-and-so, it's, documented in a newspaper and he was fired from the location and she's reaching out to him and blah, blah, well, by all means, but in terms
of public knowledge,
it's public knowledge. But as a gag order, I mean, we don't ever, that's one of the things that's cool about the paranormal is we want to find out the truth. We're doing that. We'd never gag anybody, but I think, like I said, I think there's just a proper time and a proper place to make sure that it's not done where you can ruin a family name or a community like that in that kind of fashion.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that, and I think everybody watching now, or even that goes back and watches us after the show's even over, they can understand where you're coming from. And honestly, that is a policy I've never seen anywhere else, but I now think should be everywhere, because it is very dangerous. Just like it could these people are still alive. Look at
Right.
Arch, the janitor, you know, or
Right.
the maintenance
Well,
guy.
and that's exactly right. But see, I think we're in a little bit of a different situation too, because our locations are newly closed. Now, if
Mhm.
you got a location that was, closed and, where there's no real
Yeah.
anybody that's still alive that's connected to that location, then
Mhm.
it's a little bit different of a scenario. But we're tiptoeing around a location, like I said, it's only been closed for 13 years.
Mhm.
OSPH has only been closed for 30 years. So there's a good chance that there might be people still alive who worked in both buildings. And if you've got Mary Lou who worked at Harriman, as an example, and then you got a psychic running around telling people that so-and-so was killing people or whatever, or there was malpractice going on, Mary Lou's going to go, I worked in that hospital and that's not true. So why are people running around talking about the hospital that I spent half of my life in,
Mhm.
helping people, and they're creating all these rumors that aren't true. And like I
Right.
said, and that's, like you said, that's that fine line of paranormal investigating, but also just being respectful of, people who have descendants who are still alive from, the building that we call home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is a good stopping point for us to take our final break real quick. We covered a lot of stuff. I mean, there's just good stuff, folks. I mean, if you missed any portions of tonight live, you've got to go back and watch from the beginning because you missed some good stuff. Good stuff. But we're going to take our quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into some audience questions for you, Mr. Ronnie. And I have a couple more of myself, and then we'll cut out for the night. So, with that, everybody hang tight. This is Twisted Ascensions with Mr. Ronnie Dee, owner and president of Old South Pittsburg Hospital and old historic Harriman Hospital. I'll get it that time. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
No matter the questions, Ellie Weisensell can help you find the answers. Ellie is a gifted intuitive and a natural energy healer, which she applies using the body code and emotion code healing systems, among others, to help you achieve balance for your best results. Are you looking for more clarity about which direction to follow with your life, health, or career? Let Ellie guide you. As a psychic, Ellie can provide clarity to the path you are on, so you may use your free will to change the direction of your life. Are you wanting to communicate with a loved one who's passed? As a certified psychic medium, Ellie Weisensell can connect you with your loved ones on the other side to facilitate healing or offer closure. To schedule your appointment with Ellie, look her up on Facebook at Ellie Weisensell Psychic Medium or email her at ellieweisensell@gmail.com. That's Ellie Weisensell, Weisensell.
Welcome back to the show, folks. This is Twisted Ascension. I'm Caden Mask. Tonight with me is Mr. Ronnie Dee, the amazing man. Tonight has been a phenomenal discussion. I've actually learned a lot more than I even bargained for. And I truly thank you for coming on to the show and just giving us your side of running things.
Thanks. Oh, thank you.
So we got a couple of questions that we're gonna start with, and then we'll kind of, once we get past them, if we still got some time, we got about a little under 30 minutes before the end of showtime. But this comes from George Shoplin, and he's asking you, what is your favorite equipment to investigate with?
Sugar cookies.
That's what he said. That's what he said. He said the answer is always sugar cookies.
I love that, man. You know what? It's kind of funny because I think paranormal investigating, I'm going to be really honest with you, haven't done it in quite some time. Because primarily my focus now has gone from investigating to the upkeep of the hospitals. But really, to be honest with you, my body was always my favorite thing to investigate with.
Absolutely.
Primarily because I was more in it for personal experiences more than I was for like, oh, look at the REM pod go off.
Yeah.
But I that was always phenomenal to me. Like I said, when you'd be sitting around and you'd feel that rub on your hair or somebody whisper in your ear. I really like the audible things. I like the things that, like I said, that the body triggers. I think that's really cool. the problem with like using REM pods, K2 meters and that kind of stuff is, you know, they can be set off by, you know, police cars going by, airplanes flying overhead. But the one thing that you know for sure, like I said, is when you're sitting alone in a dark room and you feel a hand on your back and there's nobody next to you, you know that something's out there, something's trying to reach out to you. So my body was probably my favorite thing. And when I had experiences like that, I just ate them up.
Absolutely. I mean, we're similar. We do have some gadgets for show, and everybody that's been following us for years, they know that, because with K2s and EMFs, very few people that got into this field knew what they're used for. It's not for ghost hunting. You're actually using it for radiation detection and electronic detections. So that's what they're for. Now, sometimes they do go off, but we don't know what spirits or residents are made of. They could be gamma ray radiation. They could be electrical. They could be, plasma, you know, we're still not sure. Scientists are still trying to figure it out, but you know, some of them are cool, but overpriced. Absolutely. I would much rather use my own personal common sense and logic. You know, one of our favorite experiments that we do, and I have a video of it from Old South Pittsburg, the last time that we were there. What I like to do is take people who've never been to a building before, and I blindfold them before they walk through the door. And I'll walk them room to room. And I'm like, just tell me, does it feel like a big room, small room? Do you get a sense about it? And I just take the notes. And then at the end of it, I'll unblindfold them. I won't tell them anything until we investigate. And if something in the investigation comes up that kind of matches, I'm like, just so you know, this is the room that you said felt like X, Y, and Z. You know, to me, that's the type of stuff that I truly love. Robert White wants to know, do you know of any other non-residents, human residents, that live in the basement of the hospital, like say an elemental or anything that's a non-human of nature? Not
that I've come across. We've had other teams that have come across stuff like that. Personally, no. But once again, that's kind of a, in my opinion, kind of a, I don't know if I believe in them or not. So, you know, like I said, maybe they don't approach me because I'm still kind of more in the resident thing. But we've had teams that swear that there are things out there. We don't question them about it. And I know on the third floor, especially at Old South Pittsburg, not so much the basement, but the third floor, we've had teams that have come up that said there's an elemental up there and they're protecting the building, that kind of stuff. So I mean, I've heard it before. Whether I've investigated it or not personally, I have not. But well,
elementals they're a whole element, pun intended, on their own by themselves. I mean, the way that you investigate them is not the way that you investigate just residents. I mean, it's a whole different ball game dealing with them. And most individuals and teams out there that go location to location do not have, because there are certain equipments that you have to use or certain bodily gifts that you have to use in order to do that. So I agree. You know, I don't believe I've ran into anything elemental. Not saying there's not. I don't think we've ever dealt with anything on the elemental spectrum, but something that wasn't originally human, and it wasn't that it was bad. It was just like a poltergeist. I mean, poltergeist was never human. We dealt with one of those at Old South, but it was a fleeting thing. You know, it was not even really strong enough to make a knock on a door. It was just there and gone, like, oh, okay, whatever. That was cool. Let's see. Dawn would like to know, are you happy that the other location fell through so that you were able to acquire the hospitals? In the grand scheme of things, is that maybe?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? I've never really looked back. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was very disappointed at the time because I spent a lot of time in that location. We used to go back and forth, and the old manager there and I became really close. So if I was bored on a Wednesday and I wasn't working, I'd call her and say, hey, can I come and investigate? And she'd be like, sure. You know, I don't know. I've never really looked back. I'm really happy where I am right now. I'm really happy with, you know, Old South Pittsburg and Harriman. But as I said, and we talked about earlier, I really, truly think that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I think that everything kind of happens for a reason. And I think that fell through. I think a lot of times in life, you got to be disappointed so that you can be happy.
Absolutely.
And I think it was very disappointing that it didn't happen. But, like I said, I never look back. OSPH is always going to be my home. I mean, I get really choked up and kind of emotional about her. Everybody's like her. But she's kind of like, like your first girlfriend. I know a lot of us men, our first girlfriend is kind of the love of our lives. And we always remember her as time goes by. And OSPH is kind of that for me. Harriman is a great location too, but it just doesn't hold my heart the way OSPH does.
Yeah. That's your high school sweetheart right there. Right? That's your high school sweetheart.
Right.
No, absolutely. Oh man, I can't wait to get back out there now. Like, you're making me have the itch. We haven't really investigated most of the year. We just been doing, we ran the Coliseum there for a little bit, tried to get it off the ground, but we ran into the same issues, much like you did at first with Old South. Unfortunately, back in the 90s, and we've been trying for 6 years to get into locations in our area. But back in the 90s, there was a legitimate team at the time that did paranormal investigations. They were very well known in this area. But towards the end of their stint, they were doing very questionable things, and they got booted out and everybody got banned. But and then we came around and we tried to talk to a couple of them. They're like, no, we've already had too many break-ins. And as soon as we announced that we're haunted, there's going to be more break-ins. And I'm like, I get it. I'm like, why don't you give us a year? Watch us for a year. See if you like how we do things, and let's reevaluate. We got our foot in the door, and, the mayor still wants us to come in there and do it, but understandably, he can't force a building owner to let us in strictly for the revenue. So it was a bummer. It was a short stint. We only got to do a handful of events there before something that didn't even have anything to do with us happened. The the directors got fired, and then the art council took back over, and the art council are not into the paranormal stuff. That's all satanic and demonic. We want nothing to do with it. So we very kindly, they were respectful. I'll give them that. They were very respectful. I thank you for everything you've done so far. Because I was pressure washing the Coliseum. I was helping repaint stuff on in there. I was helping move things, trying to get it back to looking good. Because it was much like Old South when you first took over. It's just falling in, mold. I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get it back to that. And I'm like, take some time. I was like, take the year. I said, let's take the year off. In 2024, let's have another meeting and talk it out. So we're hoping 2024 we may get back in.
Good.
That is the goal.
If you need any help, have them give me a call.
Hey, absolutely. I appreciate that. You may just add a third to your list, sir. You may just add a third.
Well, and it is, from a building owner point of view. I mean, it's a real challenge. It's a real fine line, because like we said at the beginning of the podcast, is that there's a lot of people out there who don't understand what we do. And, the YouTubers out there and people who are doing things the wrong way, they're adding to the challenges that we as building owners and paranormal investigators now have, because we're trying to go a different direction and they're going a different direction. And so, it's that real fine line between, what we're doing and what we're not doing. And like I said, there's so many movies out there, even movies that, that people are sitting around in a basement, with a pentagram and sacrificing chickens to, put curses on people. And that's kind of that's kind of what some people on the outside looking in think we do. And then, like I said, and then they get involved in it and they're like, oh, this is nothing like what, is on TV or what we're seeing here or there. And I think it's really important as building owners and paranormal investigators that we keep going down, that path, because, when I first got involved paranormal investigating, we were kind of the laughing stock of everything. I mean, everybody's kind of laughing at us. We're sitting around in a building with these, like you said, devices that light up and flashlights, and everybody was using all different kind of things, and people kind of look down on us. Now we're actually getting to the point where we're getting respect. We're actually getting people who are like, they're scientifically starting to move forward on the paranormal. So we're making ground as investigators and building owners, and we need to keep that focus.
Absolutely.
And I think that the more and more that we do things right, the more and more we're not going to be looked down on. We're going to be more like people are going to be questioning, what are we interacting with?
Yeah.
And I think that's the ultimate goal for us building owners, as well as the people in the paranormal field, is we want to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, we need society and we need people on our side to be like, they're not chasing demons and they're not, sacrificing chickens and they're not doing this. They're trying to scientifically figure out, because you know what? It's out there. I've had so many experiences in my buildings that I can't explain. So there's something going on out there. I just don't know what it is yet. Yeah. And I think that's the more and more of us that get involved, that have these experiences, the more as a unified team we become, the more people are like, oh, there has to be something to this, because there's 200,000 people out there who are all chasing the same thing. Yep. And as we get more and more popular and we do things more and more the right way, more and more people are listening. And Harriman is that exact way, is that, we had to prove to them that what we're doing isn't the bad things they're watching on TV. And now we're there and we've got community members who come and they're like, we had a community member who came to one of our investigations a couple months ago. She contacted her dead grandmother. Like, she
how
put it on
awesome.
A voice recorder. Like, she died in the hospital, actually, and she's literally in the lobby of the hospital in tears. And I'm like, does that bother you? She says, no, today's the happiest day of my life. And I said, why? She says, because my grandmother said she was doing fine and she was looking out for me. And it's an EVP.
Wow, that is awesome.
I was kind of like, and it gives me goosebumps, but
she
was like, I recognize her voice. And so
that's amazing.
There's something out there. There's something out there in the afterlife that they're still looking out for us. And, this was a great example of somebody coming to the hospital who lost a grandparent, who that grandparent actually spoke to them via EVP. And it was quite cool. And she's been back 2 or 3 times other. And what was really neat on the EVP is it was as plain as day, but the grandfather or grandmother, I think it was one of the two of them, called her by a name that only she knew. And that was what was on the EVP.
That's amazing.
There was nobody in that whole room that knew what she was called. And she's like, that's my grandparent, because that's what they used to call me. I'm like, whoa, that's cool.
That's amazing. And I'm much like you. I love getting evidence for myself, but I get more enjoyment watching somebody else have a one-on-one encounter than anything. It is the greatest feeling to ever witness and feel personally. I'm just like, yes.
Especially when it's something that touches home like that, where you lose a loved one and you're kind of worried about what's going on. And they're like, the EVP was like, no, I'm safe and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really it was eye-opening. It was the first time I actually experienced something like that. So I was just kind of taken back, and it was, and that, like I said, that's what's rewarding about owning a building like that, is when somebody comes in and they get that type of evidence or that experience. And, and it's neat because she left the building as happy as can be. I mean, she was really like, oh my God, they're doing good, in depth. And so it made us all feel good. So
that's awesome. That is awesome. So, I mean, you have these 2 amazing locations. You have put literally your heart, soul, and savings into these locations. You've built 2 phenomenal teams that are helping you run them, right? And they staff, and I'm assuming that they also help with events and such.
That's correct.
So when it comes down to it, and we're going to get to the bare bones, because we've hit on all the bare bones but one for the most part. But was there a reasoning to your pricing? Because I know right now, not just your location, just locations in general. I've always been curious, was there already a financial pricing that was there and you just adopted it? Or was it something that you wrote down, well, this is how much lights are, water is, and this, so let's do this much? How did you come up with the pricing to rent it out for private investigations? Because I know events are different, but
to be really honest, what I did is I did kind of a study on all the locations that have been around for a long time. I looked at their sizing. I looked at what our size was. I looked at the upcoming maintenance that we know that we've got to put money aside.
Right.
And what I did is I just kind of came up with a happy medium between what Waverly charges, what Hillview Manor charges, what all the different locations charge. And I was like, okay, I know the value of the building is this. And I know that this is what a good example is we just had quotes done for the roof at Harriman, and we're looking at anywhere from $350,000 to $2 million to put a new roof on.
My
So, and
goodness.
that's the part that people don't understand is like, oh my God, these building owners, they're rolling dough. Well, the thing is that the maintenance, like a good example is everybody knows Tennessee had one of these really harsh winters last year. We lost almost 200,000 gallons of water in about 2 hours because one of our mains broke. And I don't think people understand how expensive it is to get a plumber down there on Christmas Day. It was Christmas Day to actually fix the plumbing and put it all back together and all other stuff. And so when you're talking these old buildings, you're talking about you have to have a good supply of money in the bank for emergency causes or purposes. So you kind of come up with like a pricing structure to based off of what your future renovations are, kind of what you spent on the money. Because most people don't realize this is I did pay for the hospitals. And as the owner of the hospital, you want to be able to kind of return that investment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like yourself, if you're going to spend $100,000 on something, you eventually want that $100,000 back.
Right.
So you've got to kind of, put it all together and then come up with like like something in the middle. So that's pretty much what I did is I just went, like I said, based off of other locations, their size. And most importantly, I looked at myself and I said, as a paranormal investigator, and I've got a group of 8, what can I afford? What do I think is a decent amount of money that I would spend to go to a location?
Right.
And if I thought it was too much, like I've got a lot of people who tell me I'm way too cheap on Harriman. It's 186,000 square feet. We charge $850.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, oh, that's too cheap. That's too cheap. And then there's people like, oh, it's too expensive. Well, I'm like, you know what? I think $850. It's $100 a person. You get 10 hours in the building. That basically is $10 an hour per person. So I'm like, that's in today's day and age, that's about the right price. And, if you're getting a hotel room is what, $150 for 2 people for overnight. So, it's kind of, like I said, we kind of balanced everything out to kind of come out with the numbers we did. Are we the cheapest out there? No, but our locations are huge and they're clean. And so, like I said, so we're kind of right in that middle.
Right. No, I completely understand. And everybody's cheap with everybody. Like everybody has a different range of cheap and more expensive,
Right.
With me, like it's just me and Alyssa when we go somewhere. So for 2 people to pay Waverly's like $1,500, like that's outrageous. I can't, I'm not going to spend $1,500 for, I think it's like 6 hours you investigate, something like that. I can't do that. But once a year when we link up with our Ohio chapter and they come down, that makes 6 of us. If they bring at least 2 more, that's 8. Harriman would be perfect, or Old South would be perfect. You split it individually. And that's kind of where, and I've been an advocate for a lot of locations that I know, not yours, but other locations. I'm like, okay, you're charging this much money, but you're only letting them get 3 hours of investigation. An hour of that setting up and taking down if they use the equipment.
Right.
So to me, I don't go there, and it's nothing against them. I just don't feel comfortable.
Right. And that's why I think, like I said, that's why we give a full 10 hours, because I think most groups, it's an hour, like you said, to set up. Yeah. We give a little bit of a tour at the beginning and then, usually an hour to break down. So you've got a good, it depends on how your time is, but anywhere from 9 to 8 hours to investigate the building. And I think that's pretty ideal, because usually about the 7th or 8th hour into investigating, you're kind of doing this anyways.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think 10 is pretty fair. We've had groups that will make exceptions for them. We'll give them a little extra time. Yeah. But I find that really a lot of groups will start usually heading out about 8 hours into it, where they're just tired. They want to go home. I know this year that we're talking about changing, and this is really good for you. I know that my team and I have actually sat down and we're talking about changing some pricing for this year, primarily to get groups like yourself in, who will just be 2 of you.
Yeah.
So we're working on a different pricing structure too. That'll be primarily during the week. But like I said, it'll be really inexpensive for you and a friend to come out, run the whole building to yourself, because we really, really we don't want to have to also depend on, like you said, big groups. Yeah. We would like to have littler groups come out, and I think a lot of people get a lot more evidence too in a smaller group sometimes.
And that's always been our problem. I would love to be able to have that many friends to go to a location, but when you get to these locations, most of the time, if you have way too many people, your evidence gets contaminated, or if 9 of you are in a great mood, but that one's in a bad mood, it's not a good time.
Right, and like you said, I mean, and you got 8 of you in a group, and 4 of you take it seriously, and 4 of you are just there for you. So you're right; it does kind of ruin that whole, what do you call it? So I know that myself and my team, we're talking about, we're going to roll out new pricing for 2024. Primarily, it'll be Sunday through Thursday dates, but we're going to give full nights, and we're gonna really gear some of those days to groups of 2, groups of 4, and really lower the price for them.
If you do that, you're going to have to start beating people away with sticks. I'm telling you.
That's kind of the object. Well, and I think the thing is that there's group like you who want to come, by yourselves, and then you get addicted, and then you bring 8 back with you and do a Saturday night. You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of good because it's going to kind of promote itself. But like I said, we've been reached out by a lot of people who are like, oh, my husband and I want to come and do an investigation. And well, it's $850. Well, that's outrageous. We can't do that. So we really want to try and work this upcoming year with being able to do something like that for groups of 2 or 4. So like I said, your wife can come down and enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I will be waiting for that because I'm telling you, as soon as you roll it out and I see it, I will see you within a matter of weeks. I will see you for sure. Well, Mr. Ronnie,
everybody who's watching this podcast, you heard that, right?
Yeah. Listen, as soon as Mr. Ronnie puts it out there, if I'm not there within a month, one of y'all better come get me because apparently I didn't see it. So you're going to have to come get me. Mr. Ronnie, tonight was a phenomenal show. I've got to get you back on here. There's a lot of great stuff. I feel like we really only scratched the surface. But, I mean, you have so many stories, so much experience when it comes to both of these locations, not just as the owner, but you investigated Old South before then. So I know you've got a lot of cool stories, and I've definitely got to get you back on here. But for the final question tonight, we always try to ask our guests something funny. Okay. We always try to ask. When you pass away, what do you want your ghost outfit to be? If you could pick anything, what's your ghost outfit?
I can't say because it's inappropriate.
It's okay. Birthday suits are appropriate.
Yeah, I don't, you know what? I know that's like a great question. I don't know, but I would probably maybe Michael Myers.
Ooh.
Yeah, maybe something that's really daunting, so that when you get to see my full body apparition run past you, it kind of frightens you a little bit.
Right? Oh my, that'd be nostalgia for so many people. I would go chasing after you just to talk about, wait.
Big machete or maybe even like Freddy Krueger would be kind of cool with the blades going down the hallway.
Yes. Yeah.
But I do think one of the things that I do, and I know this sounds really kooky, but I'm kind of really waiting for the afterlife because, dude, there's a lot of people I want to haunt. Like, I'm excited because I'm going to be the guy who's in your living room at night, who's messing with the TV remote. And you're like, what the hell's going on here? And you call Samsung and say, you know what, there's something wrong with my TV. And I'm just going to be sitting there laughing at you.
Oh, I done told my wife, I'm like, listen, we have code words if one of us passes before the other so we know it's each other. And I've already told her, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to haunt you every day because I got some other people I got to visit. And they're going to think that because of how they talk, I'm like, they're going to think I'm a demon. And it's because they're going to be watching a football game and I'm going to cut the TV off right before the touchdown. I'm just going to be evil.
So evil. We've got to make a pact right now that in the afterlife we hook up.
Yes.
I am so in.
Yes.
Especially we've got to find those people who bet on the Super Bowl.
Oh,
so we can turn it off right before the kind of keep them guess. We're gonna have fun in the afterlife. It's
gonna be awesome in the afterlife. I'm telling you, Mr. Ronnie, tonight was phenomenal. Like I said, I've got to get you back on here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And go ahead and tell everybody where they can look up your locations or look up you or reach out to book all of the goodness.
Oh, here we go. So we're on Facebook. Obviously, one of them is Old Historic Harriman Hospital. The other one is Old South Pittsburg Hospital. I think it's actually Haunted Old South Pittsburg Hospital. We're on Facebook. That's usually the main means that everybody goes by. But you can also look us up at OSPHPRC.com or hauntedharrimanhospital.com. See, I don't even know these. No, I think it's oldhistorichairmanhospital.com. So yes, it's oldhistorichairmanhospital.com. And then a couple of things coming up while I got a couple of seconds. You guys, we're having prom again this year. I think it is October 13th and 14th with Brian and Michelle from the Ghost Hunters. Last year we did it. It's sold out. It's awesome. Prom is cool. You come bloody, come all dressed up. We have dinner, we have dancing, we have prom king and queen, and then we go across the street and do some ghost hunting. And that's October 13th and October 14th. Don't miss that. That's going to be a blast.
I think we looked at that. I think we're going to come to it this year.
Awesome. Yeah,
We're
we just put a couple price out there too. We kind of lowered the prices a little bit. So I think it's $159 or something like that for a couple, which isn't bad.
No.
I mean, you're getting dinner, you're getting dancing, you're getting movies.
That's cheaper than a normal date night for most couples.
And then you go across the street and ghost hunt with Brian and Rochelle of the Ghost Hunters.
Yes.
Everybody has ever been out with Brian and Rochelle, top notch, man. They're awesome. They're fun to be with.
I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to the many other events that you guys are going to be doing. You're doing phenomenal work, you and your team. Kudos to you. Keep doing the phenomenal work.
Well, thanks for having me on here, and anytime you want to talk about paranormal, give me a call.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Ronnie Dee. Until next time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, see you.
Good night.
Good night. Awesome. Man, he was such a great guest. Oh my goodness, I'm still over here just kind of starstruck with him. He answered a lot of great questions that I know most of us within the field, and I can actually take this off now. Most of us in the field have been wanting to know or curious to know. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you missed any portions of tonight, as always, you can always go on WLTK-DB.com, search Twisted Ascensions, or you can download the WLTK-DB app. Also on Facebook, and plus the boss man himself hooked us up with a private channel on Podbean. So all the link is on Southern Ascension Facebook page. I believe it's also on my personal Facebook page if you go to mine. But yeah, check us out everywhere. Check out all the other hosts of the podcasts on the WLTK-DB radio, talk radio. But I'm going to jump off here because it is Friday night. Everybody needs to go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be hot and exciting. Stay safe. Love you all. May the gods bless you. May the gods be with you. Till next time, we'll see you.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.